When it comes to every aspect of Ultimate being discussed, the active corner pressure tends to be overlooked despite its importance. It thus deserves to be looked into further. You even have corner pressure to begin with, the opponent has to actually be in the corner, obviously. There are plenty of ways for any given character to skip the process of getting back to neutral, but those options can be considered a cheap alternative to earning the stage back. Corner skips can definitely work, but inherently forces a more immediately vulnerable position should that fail. Rolling and going very high are the main examples. But if unprovoked and unchallenged, those skips can kill any attempt at proper corner pressure. Assuming the opponent must now earn their way back, several different styles can prevent that. Depending on the character, certain styles will be much better than others, but since corner pressure is a part of advantage state, the possibilities open up quite a bit more due to freedom of options. The simplest way to think about it is just hitting the opponent directly for an aggressive attack. An aggressive approach to corner pressure can be a Fox or Cloud Bear. With little space to move out of the way, the opponent has to interact with the move somehow, whether it's attacking back, rolling, jumping away, shielding, etc.
The nice part about the aggressor though is that conditioning comes very fast, since throwing out those types of hitboxes can be considered a rinse repeat scenario, and then can be compounded by doing other things. Rising Bear to catch late shields and counterattacks, shielding yourself to punish an unsafe move, grabbing a shield, and more. The corner also makes things more threatening for attacks that send horizontally. Both Fox and Cloud have low-powered grabs, normally not great, but in the corner, they'll just send off stage to put the opponent in a rinse-repeat scenario. It also makes those bears much more lethal than in the center, which puts extra emphasis on avoiding those attacks, making everything that isn't that attack better. Playing more passively around the corner can still be threatening for the opponent by staying away from the threat ranges that they provide and poking and prodding in whatever way your character does. Charge characters are fantastic at this. As soon as a cornered opponent drops their shield, they're at risk of getting hit due to the charge character being prepped for that and reacting accordingly, while other characters do it nicely as well. Staying out of range is important to actually get a proper wave punish for your trouble. When in range of an opponent's attack, mix-ups by them will be unreactable and much harder to beat. However, with ample space to utilize, there is a lot more opportunity for a cornered opponent to fire back, and it also requires knowledge of what someone wants to do in the corner. As such, this kind of style is better when they're a kill percent or you have a lead to either not have to risk the opponent firing back properly on you over and over, or if they do, it's not as much of a problem. This is character dependent, as the close range versus mid-range pressure of some of the cast gives is in favor of the latter, so a more passive corner pressure game will play a more prominent role. For certain members of the cast that go beyond a short distance quickly, like Pikachu or ZSS, the distance given to the opponent must be greater in order to not let up on the pressure you're given. Retreating is another good way of getting hits when the opponent is in the corner. If you have all the stage to work with, you might as well use some of it. A last minute retreat is a part of both aggressive and passive styles of corner pressure as well, since it's so good at calling out overextensions, but starting out with a slight retreat isn't bad either. Retreating has its own layers beyond just dashing away, like a couple dash chances to keep close enough, retreating hitboxes to cover yourself, retreating to do it around a beer versus stop cold and be threatening all at once depending on the character, or whatever you can do to mask your intentions.
Callouts can be a style as well in a different sort of way. Simply put, a callout can be doing an option that doesn't open up much more in terms of corner pressure, but can bring in a hard punish if it does connect or at least complicate defense. Things like smash attacks, tether grab, some dash attacks can all fit that description. The risk these options put you in means that it shouldn't be relied on, but can be very useful in late game scenarios or to get a kill much earlier than a more standard approach. Callouts will naturally be more important the longer the set goes on, as info gets picked up on how corner pressure is escaped by the opponent. It's worth noting that corner pressure should not be limited to one style and can be put into a melting pot during gameplay. A passive style can be subtly aggressive to force a reaction despite not immediately being threatening. An aggressive style often uses last minute retreats to avoid attacks that would otherwise hit. A retreating style can stop movement in order to help the opponent trying to bring the space away from you, and transition into being aggressive if up close or passive if further away. When talking about these styles, it was assumed that the opponent isn't moving only because they're in range of getting hit or want to move away quickly, but this will never always be the case. A lot of the time, people won't actually move to the very edge of the stage and will instead wait the situation out. This is something every type of style can both win and lose to. A more aggressive style needs to be aware of parry into something lethal if they decide to use shield, or an option with little lag or large range, and the aggressor must be prepared to deal with those. Projectiles are also strong in the corner due to them hitting where basic attacks cannot, which can complicate a more passive style. Something like Gyro that blocks other projectiles is especially good at this. And if a character has a chargeable resource, they may be able to turn the tables on a retreating opponent and make life harder for them next time they go in. Even if it was said that rolling was a skipping tool, it's an option that should be respected for beating out approaches to a corner and attacks that are only able to hit on one side without being able to cover it. A short-term gain won't be any pain if it isn't punished. If you're out of range of every other option they have, you only need to react to one thing in that moment, and if the spacing doesn't feel quite right to punish it, back up or move forward until it does, assuming it won't just be done immediately. A good deal of the time too, an option like dash attack will be done when you try approaching them. Baiting that out isn't too bad since it's known what triggers that sort of thing. A long range dash attack, dash shield, jumping over vertically shorter dash attacks are all valid for punishment, and if they do this with grab instead, that's better for you since grabs are generally more committal on average. If someone does decide to go above to escape horizontal pressure, that just means they're now at risk of getting hit in the air or on landing, meaning they still haven't gotten out of overall disadvantage state yet, and a juggle state can be very bad for some of the cast. If for whatever reason you do get hit at low percent and for some attacks even mid percent, you can actually keep up your stage position. You won't go a great distance by a straight aerial or something like that, and the opponent has to make another read just to be able to convert properly off their hit, so don't panic, reassess, and get back to your advantage state.
Failure.
Poor corner pressure generally revolves around giving the opponent more control than what should be allotted. A dash attack at the edge can have good reward, but is also potentially very fatal for you. Callouts are risky, and relying on them isn't going to make the long run pretty. Giving up too much space is another problem. Don't just run to the center when someone is cornered without hesitation. It's fine to back up and fine to go back to center, but some sort of threat needs to be present for that in order to make the process slow and grindy. Patience is also very necessary for keeping advantage. There are options that the opponent has to not commit for stage and poke until getting the stage back for them is risk-free. Leave Fit is an excellent example. They'll have to confront you eventually though, and after enough time, the moves they do to stall can be punished themselves, but taking chip damage when someone cornered isn't ideal. Be wary of attacks unsafe on shield too. Because there isn't a safe place to go yet, shielding is common, as the pressure done is able to be punished out of shield when the situation is resetting it. Dash shielding is a similar concept for this.